Imagine it's like your entire fan base had a bunch of stepdads that you just didn't like, and you had to deal with all that for like 41 fucking years. So I totally get it. Like I totally get it.
That's the cold open, Jim.
Flip that.
Welcome to My God a Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I are joined by Chris Marler of Saturday Down South and Saturday Football Uncensored. We talk about how Chris got his start in sports media, how he ended up a Bama fan, a lot of college football, and yes, we talk about that time Chris was shot. As always, remember to check out store.mygodapodcast.com to see our latest merch, and you can follow us on social media at My God a Podcast. Now, let's join the conversation in progress. All right, so I think 3 weeks in a row we're actually recording. Hiatus is over. We're going to call this a three-peat. And again, there actually has been a conversation going on. So John and I are joined by Chris Marler. You may know him as Vern Funquist on Twitter. Which
the notorious.
We didn't talk about this.
Listeners, just right off the bat.
As okay, we didn't talk about this in the pre. That is like one of my favorite Twitter handles, by the way.
Seriously,
that is excellent. But you can find Chris works at Saturday Down South, and you can check out the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. Chris, welcome to My God Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's good to be here. I appreciate the shout out on the Twitter handle. I tell you what, it was funny because when I made it, I was like super hungover at the 2018 media days or 2019, maybe. I don't remember. I think it's 2019. And I was like, okay, we had drank Gabriel's out of White Claw the night before, which is not the most manly thing I've ever said, but it was like right when White Claw came out. And I was like, I'm going to change my handle to either Claw Feinbaum or Vern Funquist. And I feel like I made the right choice for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Yeah,
you're
seriously.
now on the second incarnation of it because Twitter/X is lame. And someone can't take a joke, apparently.
I will say, admittedly, making a Kirby Smart sex tape joke was not my best move.
To be fair,
Fools, and it was up for like an hour and a half, and I'm the one that took it down because it didn't even get enough likes. Like that's how petty I was being to myself. And then I was like, and then I get a notification. It's like shut down. And then of course, in typical fashion, there was like Georgia fans that were like, well, maybe he shouldn't have said this. And I was like, okay, Bobby, cool. Like my bad.
I couldn't even remember exactly what it was. I didn't even remember that's what it was.
It honestly was a good fresh start to have a new one. To like not make as many enemies, but I'm already well on my way to doing that again anyway. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Did you change your image and like not just your handle, like the line at the top? Yeah.
I mean, like a TNT Sports. It was like, but again, it was up for an hour and a half. I will never forget this. I was like, okay, so I made the whole joke and I had it like ready to go for like several days at a time or beforehand. And I was like, this is what I'm going to say. And I thought it was so funny and it wasn't at all. And then like posted it and I was like, okay, let's see how many. I walked down. I was living in Virginia Highlands in Atlanta at the time, and so I walked down to go get what do you call it, like breakfast and coffee on a Saturday at like I don't know 11 when I got up. Some random day I was up before noon at that point in my life, and so I go down there and I'm like, okay, well this isn't getting that many likes. I'm gonna change this whole thing and like take it down, change my profile picture back again, whatever. So I'm like going through like, all right, which profile picture looks best, and all the while, Twitter was already like, no, you're done. Like you're done. You're not going to change any of this. Like you're. So I just
wow. That's funny. Sorry, Carter.
All good. Man. So, and I know you've recently relocated. One thing I wanted to ask, because I know like you were doing stand up like around Atlanta, like Punchline and stuff. Is that something that's still available to you in the new area? Still trying to keep up with that? I've
been doing it for like 11 years. Like I did it like, especially before I started doing this job. This job is like, I love this job even more than I love doing comedy. Comedy is like one of like my main things for a very long time, but I really enjoy this more. And I kind of get to mix all that together, right? And not take myself too seriously as like somebody that's in media now. But like Columbia, the scene is not nearly as good. I haven't performed here, but to be honest, I didn't perform for like a full year last year in Atlanta. Just like, okay. I lost the passion for it, and wasn't in like the best mind or headspace to do it anyway. And then I was like, I finally realized, I think it was like around like May or something like that of this year. I was like, holy shit, I haven't done comedy in like a year. And then I went to a show and did it, and like it was fun again. So like I'll probably do some shows in Columbia at some point, or Charleston or Greenville or whatever. But the scene is not nearly the same. It's just not.
Right.
Atlanta, crazy.
Right.
So where are you at right now?
Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh.
The hottest place on earth. Yeah, appropriate reaction. It's so hot. I don't know if you can see in the background, there's a Roku setup up here, because all I've done for the past like week and a half is watch like 87 shows in its entirety on Netflix and shit, because it's like, I'm not going outside. It's 1,000 degrees outside.
I was just referring to Columbia just in general.
Yeah. Also,
I just picture it just like sandstorm just playing like constantly over and over again, like on the hour, every hour.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never really been there outside of going to like when Georgia's. I've driven through, but like as far as like staying for weekends, so I've been for a game, and I know like those games are always insanely hot. So that was my question: is it like that all the time? And I guess apparently yes.
It is awful. It is the hottest place on earth, and I know that everything's going through a heat wave right now anyway, but like. Yeah, it is the hottest place on earth. It's like a suffocating heat, like where it's like you walk outside and it's just like right on you, like right off the bat.
Columbia is just the armpit of America.
Yeah, you're the second person to tell me this. I will say I do love Columbia itself, and I'm glad to be out of Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta for 37 years. Mm-hmm. Really loved Atlanta. I still do. But I like it just was time for a change.
Got it. So you started talking a little bit about like when you got in, I don't know, just comedy for sports media, et cetera. And I was curious just on like how you got there. A lot of people are like, hey, I'd like to be a sports journalist, but not everyone goes out there and does it. Right. And
you want me to tell you the key to getting there?
Well, I was curious.
The roadmap.
Well, I was curious, like, was it always the goal? Were you doing something else before? Because you were already doing that when I found you on Twitter, we'll say, right? So
anybody that wants to get into sports media, here's what you need to do. You want to go to a small liberal arts college in Milledgeville, Georgia, for roughly 5.5 to 6 years. You want to get a degree in liberal studies. And once you leave with that degree, which is basically a degree in having a second place finish in barroom trivia for the rest of your life. And then you want to go bartend and aim wanderlessly in your professional life and career for the next 6 to 10 years. That's exactly what. So I was working at Houston's in Atlanta off Lenox Road.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy because I just like, I loved college football. It's one of my favorite things since I was a kid. Anybody that follows me knows that. And I was bartending and I started like, this is like the whitest thing I've ever said, but like I started a blog. And it was called Red, White, and Bro. And so what
was it called?
Red, White, and Bro.
White, and Bro. Okay.
Yeah, this is like 2015, right? So I would start doing these like weekend articles, and I would write like the process of it was ridiculous because I was like 28. Mm-hmm. So we're all going to be very open here. I would get off work on Thursday. I would go get booze. I would take my prescribed Adderall. And I would stay up until 4, just drinking and writing 3,500 words about the games that weekend, and like no editing. Like it was all probably one paragraph. And then but we would call it winning and boozing. And I would like write like the summation of what was going to happen, like prediction, score, and then like we would attach a booze to each game. So like the year that Mizzou beat Georgia, 2013.
Yeah.
I was like Tito's Bloody Mary, and I don't mean Tito's vodka. I mean Tito's, the homeless guy off Millage Ave, his vodka and a Bloody Mary. And it would be like describing like whatever crazy drink you would have at the tailgate. So I started doing that for a while, and then I was like working bartending one night, and I heard somebody talking about, I think they said like Tuscaloosa or something, or Starkville, and I was like, we talking football over here? And this will shock you, but I hijacked the conversation. And then we hit it off, and it was the owner and president of SDS, Kevin Duffy, and we just kind of hit it off. And I had been doing some stuff on TV. I had been doing comedy. I had been doing all that. I'd been writing, and so I sent him like a sample of it, and he was like, "All right, well, maybe if you whittle down the excessive amount of F words you're using for no reason in your writing, we could start to use you." And then I got hired part time 2017, 2018 full time, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay,
that's awesome.
It's been something. It's been a ride, man. It's been kind of a wild ride. I got very, very lucky, and I'm very fortunate to be here.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting you to say. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting you to say, but that's not what I was expecting you to say. That's pretty cool.
You thought I went about the proper channels to become a professional journalist?
No,
I know I can do that.
I figured you had.
Off the beaten path,
a different
journey.
one. Yeah, I figured that. But like, I don't know. It is amazing. Like you hear a conversation at the bar, and that's the intro. That's pretty incredible. I mean,
yeah.
Who's your who kind of like inspires you, or like you kind of, like, you know how everybody kind of models their craft off of something, like who's your role model?
So at the time when I first started doing it, the only reason I ever picked up a pen, but like, nobody writes with that really necessarily anymore. But like it was every day should be Saturday. I would listen to the podcast and I would read their stuff, and I was like, man, this is exactly what I want to be doing. Like, this is like, it's humorous and it's funny and it's like highbrow and like, it's way smarter than like what I was doing. But it was like, I mean, at the time, especially when I was doing stand-up, my whole thing was like very, very sarcastic, very kind of holy, like, like just a kind of a, I'll just say like just kind of like a dickhead, sarcastic person.
Goading Georgia fans.
I mean, you do it to yourself, but I am really good at that, I guess. I will say that. It backfired tremendously.
Well, Saturday Down South was good at that too.
I don't even start. This is what cracks me up about. This is when I know I'm doing a good job with like.
I mean, every day should be Saturday.
Every time, yeah, that's true because it's Florida guys. But every time somebody says,
exactly,
for so and so, I'm like, I mean, think about this. Like, if you guys have been following me for a while, think about the fact that there are real people in this world that think I'm a Georgia fan or a Georgia home, like for real. And if you can't look at the receipts anymore because my old Twitter is gone, thank God. But
true.
If you just look back, it is hilarious to me that like people actually think that. But no, so it was every day should be Saturday. And then I remember doing like in year 1 or year 2, I was having a really difficult time trying to figure out what I wanted to do because, like I said, I love college football. It's been my favorite thing since I was 4 years old. We'll get into why I'm a Bama fan, like I know, like in a minute or whatever. But like I grew up around it. It was like it became like a huge part of my identity, and I love it. And so I nerd out about it, and I love like getting into like stats and history and looking at old games and all this other shit like that. But also like I like being able to joke around about it and not taking it too seriously. I had this very weird try to like balance I was trying to figure out, which was like I want to be taken seriously because I feel like I know what I'm talking about a majority of the time. But I also want to be myself and not take myself too seriously and like make jokes and have it like be like fun and like I don't want to be buttoned up and I don't want to be fucking Darren Rovell or whoever. He doesn't cover SEC football, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so I didn't want to do that. And I remember talking to Chris Doring one offseason. He's like, you just need to figure out what you want to be. Like, if you want to be Bear Felica and like come up with all these stats, like do that. But if you want to be like Pat McAfee, like and be fun and like have like your personality shine through it, like then do that. And so what I decided to do was be one of those or both of those, but on a much smaller and less successful way. You know what I mean? Just a much less successful version of both.
I mean, they had a little bit of a leg up, right?
Yeah. A little bit.
I think that's spot on because I feel like that's kind of, you're like the everyday guy, right? Like and that's kind of like, I mean, I think that kind of resonates with Jim and I. Like we kind of go down the rabbit hole with dog stats, and on the stats side of things. And I've learned so much listening to like Graham and Brooks Austin and those guys do X's and O's. And it's like, but that can't be me like 100%.
Yeah. Well, and
you gotta get loosey goosey with a lot of
guys,
different stuff.
all three of those guys you mentioned, I genuinely think the world of, and I know that they, besides Josh, I don't think that Graham or Brooks really think that I think that necessarily because we've gone back and forth on Twitter and like that. But like, I just think the world of all three of them, and I really do respect so much what they did because like, I'll tell you what, anybody that like is able to carve out like a part of this like whole like like a piece of the pie for themselves, and all three of those guys have done like a great job doing that. And you look at like what Graham and what Brooks have been able to do, and Graham launching his own site and all that kind of shit. Like, I have so much respect for that. But it is difficult to try to figure out like, all right, what is my voice? Like, what do I want to do? Because in the past, I think it's like so much like you want to be like this buttoned up, like this. I want to be in the media. I want to report facts. And then you're like, I don't know. I'm not going to get into politics. It's like that all just went to shit. Like you don't have to report facts at all. You can just say whatever you want. And so like, but I mean, it became a lot of fun. And I will say like, I'm just very fortunate and like very, very grateful that I'm still able to do it because I mean, sports are worse than politics. If you think about it in a lot of ways, like we do politics every 4 years in SEC football. It's like, if you say,
I'm a Bama fan.
you say like, hey, I'm an Alabama fan. Let me give you my objective, unbiased opinion on what's going to happen today. And people are like, you like, I like this. It was, I will have so much. I still have so many issues with people like that because they will see the Bama thing. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, like I remember my mom used to say to me, she goes, "You've gotten so much more mature when like Bama loses. You don't we don't lose anymore. Like you know what I mean? For like a long time, we just didn't lose. It was like you don't know how mature. I'm not having to deal with it as much. I'm still going off the deep end, but I feel like it's such a thing that means so much to so many people, and it means so much to me because I'm a fan, and so like I love being able to have that part of the voice about it.
Yeah,
but it is frustrating. It is frustrating dealing with I get frustrated I've been better about Twitter, but it is something on a daily basis. I'm like actively having to remind myself, like, don't fight that person.
Yeah, you need to
be like Logan. You need to be like Logan. I haven't argued with anybody in 2,000 days.
He has that in his Twitter bio. If you look at his bio, he has a count of how many days it's been since he argued with someone. At one point, I was worried.
A stranger.
At one point, I was but he can argue with you though because you're not a stranger, Chris, because you know Logan Hooker, so you don't count.
About that part.
And we've established that with Logan that we don't count.
We actually did establish that with him.
There was a point in time though where I was worried that I was the last person he argued with before we knew each other, but he's confirmed that it was not me, so that made me happy too.
He's a really good dude.
Yeah, no, Logan's awesome. He's been on the pod a few times as well. But I feel like though, like nowadays, like what you're talking about is a concept that like, I mean, it didn't exist like back, like when we were growing up. I mean, I know John and I are a little bit older than you, but like with like the sports reporters on ESPN, mm-hmm. right? And it was very much like, I am neutral. And like, you're not even going to know who I cheer for. Yeah, well, that was the thing, but they would, exactly. I feel like they weren't, but they would try to act like they were. And like, I feel like nowadays people are comfortable in their fandom and can say, yeah, like I cheer for that team, but that doesn't mean that I can't have an opinion. And like, I just feel like it's so much more honest now than it used to be back in the day.
Except for when we had Seth on, and Seth wouldn't tell us who he would root for.
Well, he wouldn't say good. Well, Seth went to Maryland.
I will say that like, I always joke around. I always say like, I grew up an Alabama fan. It's one of my many flaws, right? Like, and I've got a ton of them, but like, I mean, there's not a lot of good that's come of that. Like, there hasn't been a lot of good of like telling people I'm a Bama fan. But I will say, I mean, it's the worst. It is a top 3 worst fan base in America for sure. And it's us, Tennessee, and it rotates with y'all in Ohio State. And I will stand by that. And I love you guys to death, but like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, but it is kind of like, I like being able to do it because I whether people believe it or not, there's not a thing I go into that I'm like trying to report on or whatever that I'm like going into like, I'm going to be biased about this. And I'm going to only look at it from this point of view and all that. I genuinely don't do that, but I will tell you what's wild. You brought the sports reporters. How crazy is it that like, we're like 25 years removed from a time when people are like, okay, how are we going to determine a national championship? What if we get a bunch of dudes from all over the country who have their own agendas and really don't watch all the sports because it's not even all on TV? That like, and let's let them determine who the national championship. That is insane to me. That in the 90s we were just like raw dogging reality of who was actually winning national championships at like a fair clip. It's ridiculous.
It is insane. I feel like we've gone too far, but that's probably another podcast. Or we're about to go too far.
Yeah,
I think 12 is too many, but yeah, I mean, I celebrated when the playoff was announced initially, you know, now like that Facebook, it was that Facebook memory pops up every year of like when I was celebrating the birth of the college football playoff. And I kind of look at that back a little bit differently now. I still think it's for the better, but I don't like where it's heading, but that's my get off my lawn moment on
It's
that
the
one.
Bama Invitational.
Actually, Chris, that was my.
I'm not even going to hear this because, like, listen, here's the deal.
That was my problem. That was my stance when they.
Everyone that says that, though, last year is the best example of it. Like,
Yeah,
people were trying to make a point for Bama to be in the playoff. And if, listen, objectively speaking, as a Bama fan, one, we did not deserve to be anywhere remotely close to the playoff because you lost 2 games and the schedule matters. And
Right.
2, any Bama fan that's being honest with themselves, I fully know what happened in Atlanta. I fully know what happened in Atlanta in December of 2021. Any Bama fan that says they wanted any part of playing Georgia last year is lying through their teeth because there is no chance that team would have been anywhere remotely close within 14 points of Georgia. Nowhere close.
Yeah.
And it would have been awful. So I'm very glad they didn't make the playoff.
Yeah. No, I remember you. I do remember, again, like you said, I remember you saying that online last year, like late in the year. You're like, why are people talking about this? Should not be a thing.
At all. And also, just side note on that real quick. You moved at 4. I said this when it happened. I was like, you're going to complain about whoever's 5th.
Oh, yeah.
Moved to 12, you're going to complain whoever's 13th.
Yep.
And I do think a lot of this is because of that 2011 Bama LSU game. But that
was the straw that broke the camel's back. Sorry, I talked over you. I said that was the straw that broke the camel's back for sure. That was that. Like the rest of the country was like, "Oh, we can't have this."
Right.
So.
Well, if you're Oklahoma State, then don't go lose to unranked Iowa State. And I know what happened the day before, and it was a tough situation. Blah blah blah. But like, to put that in perspective, and what people don't understand, like Bama lost to A&M 2021. That was the first time in 100 games they lost to an unranked opponent. 100. So just don't lose to an unranked team. Like, those are the 2 best teams in the country. And, it's worked in their favor sometimes, like you said, but I just, whatever. People are going to complain either way.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. We're going to start complaining about 13. It's going to go to 16, I would assume, probably. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. To close that out, what you said earlier is what I'm worried about being less important, and like that. Like in college football, the regular season matters. It's one of the only sports that we have where it's still that important. And it's the only one where like you can have a soul crushing loss like a single loss that can just derail your season. No other sport is like that. And it's like the whole, like, it's not a bug, it's a feature kind of thing to me of college football. And it's, I don't know, I feel like we're trying to fix what isn't really the problem to me, but
I've always said, I think like the best way to describe the college football season, and it's not as bad anymore because like Bama's won 2 titles without winning their own division, right? Like I get it, but like the season is so precious, and that's the only word I know how to describe it. That's like, I've described it like that since I was like a kid. Like, it's just, every game matters, and it sucks to be like a 1-loss team and to be left out. I get that, but like I would rather take that and the importance of every game and how much fun it is and how much each and every week matters over a 9-7 Giants team beating the Patriots. I get that that's like a great story, but like I hate that. I just hate it. Like it's like you lost 7 games in the regular season out of 16, and now you're world champions. Like, that's kind of crazy to me. So but it's also in the day and age too, where it's like everything has to be a thing, and I hate it because everything has to be a thing. So like when you talk about the schedule, Georgia's getting beat up for their schedule right now because it's terrible, right? Yeah. But like, you talk about SEC schedule, anytime the Big Ten wants to talk about like, well, the SEC only plays 8 games. Why are they playing Mercer in week 13? I don't know. Call me crazy, but like, if I have a November of at LSU, Ole Miss at home, and then Mercer and at Auburn, I feel like that's tougher than going to fucking Northwestern at 11 a.m. in front of 1,700 people and winning like 33 to 9. Like, that's not. Nobody wants to watch that.
Right. Ohio, Miami, like all these different places.
Yeah.
Youngstown.
I'm trying to decide where I want to go next. We had talked about a few things we could talk about. Yes, you're obviously. Let's just go for it all the way with Chris on. John, do we want to do what your traditional question is that was actually a listener question? Oh, but then pivot it for Chris?
Like, what's his Bama story?
So why don't we do this?
Okay.
So Fletcher Proctor asked, I'd like to know Chris's Georgia story.
Georgia story. Of course he
So,
did.
so
You want to hear my actual Georgia story? Do you want to know why?
this is what I want to know, because I have seen the picture that you've tweeted of you like as a kid in a Sanford Stadium. Am I getting that right? Or at least in like a Georgia shirt or something, right? Like, Chris, where did we go wrong? What happened?
Well, I'll tell you exactly. Listen, I always say this, and people are going to get uncomfortable, but like I am very open about a lot of and I don't care how this sounds, but like I grew up in a single parent home, but my first stepdad, that's how white trash I am. My first stepdad was a diehard Georgia fan, and he was a massive piece of shit. He was awful. Like he was really bad to me and my mom, and it was like a very bad home to be in. But I grew up in that, and so we would go to these games all the time. And then you had my dad, who was like also not a person I like now, but as a kid I did, and so it was like I looked up to that person. He's a Bama fan. This guy who is really, really bad to me every day, and my mom like every day. Like he's a Georgia guy, so I would wake up on Saturdays with just like somebody pressing like a Georgia decal on my face, and I hated it. Like I hated it because of like, which is like it's not irrational, but it's like also not fair to like dislike a program. And I've come a long way from that. But yeah, that's the whole backstory. Is like I grew up going to Georgia games since I was a kid, but not willingly. Like
not in a good way. It doesn't give good feelings. That makes sense. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but that makes perfect sense.
Like this is, like I said, open book, and everyone has like their own story. I'm not. It's not something I carry with me now or anything like that. But like the Bama part, that was like the only tie. I think it's like a lot of people that grew up in the South, like, you know, not the majority, but a lot of people, like that was the only tie I had with my dad, because he was a diehard Bama fan, divorced parents, so I would rarely see him. And when I did, it was like, that was our one thing. And so I just poured myself into that whole, like if I had been making the decision in fandom of who I wanted to cheer for as an adult, I mean, I can't say it would be Bama because they were winning a bunch, but I mean, at the same time, like, there's not a lot of positives to be like, I'm a Bama fan, like, off, man. Like, you know, there's not a lot of things.
It's like being a Yankees fan.
Well, and I hate to say this, but I'm a Red Sox fan because I have family up there, and I've been a Red Sox fan as a kid. So it's like I always say, like, I am like the worst fan and the biggest douchebag when it comes to, but I've been like that since I was a kid. Like I remember being like 6 and like watching the whole 1992 season, and Bama goes to the national championship, and like, you know, it's like what really hooked me. But it was the one thing that I had with my dad. And so I just clung to that. But I sat through all the bad years. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like I sat through, I was in Tuscaloosa for the 2007
years.
Dude, I tell you what, I'm not making a joke when I say this. The last time I have cried during a football game was 2003 Georgia-Alabama game. And I was too crying.
I thought Brody Croyle was going to like get killed in that game. He was like going to get decapitated.
It was, we had to start Spencer Pennington because Brody Croyle was injured. He had a separated shoulder. Spencer Pennington goes in. He gets hit by Thomas Davis, separates his shoulder. They bring in Brody Croyle.
Yep.
First series, he gets hit by like Greg Blue or maybe Thomas Davis again, separates his other shoulder. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but this is a true story. The rest of the game, they had to start a true freshman quarterback, Brandon Avalos, and he had to run to the sideline to get the play call between every single play because we didn't have a quarterback that could raise their arms to signal in the play call. It was the worst. It was the worst game I've ever watched. And that was like also, that was like my high school years too, because I went to 2002. I mean, Georgia Bama played some like really good games. Like,
the 2002 game was unbelievable.
94. People, I mean, like the areas. Tuscaloosa, that like, there's some really good games. And I will say that, like, I'm old enough now, and like I've been in therapy long enough to where like I can assess, and like there's so many positives that I do have of like my upbringing, my dad, all that kind of shit. So I can like acknowledge the good. And what Kirby's doing now, like I am a diehard Bama fan. I hope we win every single game. I do not want to live in a world where you guys three-peat. I don't.
That's fair.
But I respect the shit out of what Kirby's doing. And it's so incredible to watch. Like it is genuinely so incredible to watch what he's doing at the rate he's doing it and at the level he's doing it. And I think that fans always mix this up. Like I respect this program so much. And Athens is my favorite city. Anybody that says Sanford Stadium's on a top 5 stadium in all of college football is an idiot. I love going to Athens on Saturdays. Saturday in Athens, put on Baba O'Reilly, let's fucking go. I love it. But I will also say,
amen.
It's so good. But me saying anything negative about the fan base is not saying something negative about Georgia. Mm-hmm. It's the fans. And I knew this was going to happen when you guys won the Natty. I knew you could be like Sherman all over.
We warned everybody too.
And you did.
We are a product of everyone else's creation. It's like you did this to us.
I don't listen, I brought up why I didn't like Georgia. Imagine having to deal with it's like your entire fan base had a bunch of stepdads that you just didn't like, and you had to deal with all that for 41 fucking years. So I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. That's the cold open, Jim.
Flip that.
Yes. It's.
Let me also forewarn you that if we win 3 in a row, the amount of shithousery that's going to
be so bad. It is I remember sitting there.
Sorry, Carter.
Bowl last year, and I was like, okay. So let me I know this isn't a question, but I'll just take you through my Georgia experience from a year ago. Okay. 2021. I know he said we weren't going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up, so it's not a big thing. I went through a very traumatic experience. I was engaged. It broke off. Right. The 2021 SEC championship game to this day is probably the best game I've ever been to, because I needed that emotionally, probably more than anything. Mm-hmm. And I knew what was coming, because I thought Georgia was the best team in the country in July. And that defense is the greatest defense of all time, no matter what anybody says. That team was incredible, just talent everywhere. Yeah. You guys won the Natty, obviously, and it was tough. It was also tough because I had COVID, so I couldn't go. I was supposed to go. I couldn't go. Then I had to isolate myself and quarantine, in the basement, away from everyone. And then I lost my voice. So I sat there like fucking Charlie Chaplin for 3.5 hours watching this game. It was awful. And the Keely Ringo interception, I'll tell you how unhealthy of a person I am. There was no one touching, anywhere close to touching him. He's going in to score, and the Roku or whatever freezes at the 5-yard line. And I was like,
are we going to get him?
Maybe he dropped it. Yeah.
Maybe something stupid happens. And it did.
Oh my gosh.
But last year, it's it just seemed like you guys from the beginning of the season on, I said in July, I think it was going to be Ohio State and Georgia in the Natty. I thought Ohio State would win. I thought they were going to have the talent to win that, just with everything they had coming back. I remember sitting there in Atlanta, playing with house money. I was like, man, I'm looking like a genius either way, because Georgia will win this game, but also if they don't, I don't give a shit if Ohio State wins. I'm going to look like a genius because they're going to win the national championship. And then you guys came back, and it was awesome. I was there with one of my best friends, Lillian Tysinger, and we had so much fun. And then you remove yourself from a month later, and I was like, God, this sucks. I wish I didn't hear this all. It's so bad. And now you might win 3, and there's nobody in your way to do it. There's nobody in your way to stop you.
I don't even know how to respond to that, Chris. I will say though, I remember last year, early in the year, because we had talked to Logan leading to the preseason. I remember Logan was big on last year. You know what? We won our title. I don't know what's going to happen this year, but monkeys off the back, and I don't care. Everything is gravy.
I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it.
And a lot of us, we all were, drinking the Kool-Aid on Bama. We were all just expecting Bama to just bounce back and, be mad and do Bama things. But I do remember I think I texted John, was is Chris is he messing with Georgia fans?
He's right? Hedging. He's just what he really thinks.
Exactly. I was I didn't know whether or not to believe you. So I believe you now. I believe you now. But when it happened, I wasn't sure.
It was one thing that I knew I was never going to get credit for either way. I said, I remember we sat there on our preseason show last year, and we had a really good run. I'll say we're very lucky. Again, shameless plug, Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. I always say if you hate the bleep button but you love football, you'll love the show. And so whatever, we did our preseason picks, and we went through all of the gambling stuff and whatnot, and we made 21 predictions before the season. We went 18-3. It was insane. We had a very good run. But I said that Bama was not going to win the SEC. They were not going to make the playoff, and I thought Georgia was going to win that game because they're tougher. They're built deeper and better, and they develop better, and they're better coached right now, if we're being honest. And I can say that. I don't like it when some of y'all say it the way you say it about Nick, but I mean, I can say it. So, but it is like one of those things I know that I'm not going to get credit for, because it's going to be like, again, you guys were just apparently the victim of a bunch of Florida stepdads on Twitter for way too long. It's like,
that's probably,
never let it go.
That's crazily accurate. So so just to keep going off the rails. So actually this is kind of maybe back on the rails. Something you tweeted today, because so we talk about on our show a lot about how like Kirby says this but means that, and like how to read him. And I don't know much how to read Saban. And then today you were saying that like Saban is happy, so football is screwed, basically. So is that a thing?
That's been an ongoing thing.
Andy Staples said it.
And
here's the thing. Okay. Listen, I just am very excited about this year. That's what I'll say. The schedule's tough. But I remember going into last year and I was like, I kept saying over and over again that Texas game was going to be a one-score game. And I remember saying over and over, it's going to be a one-score game, and there's no good that's going to come out of it. Because if they destroy Texas, they should have destroyed Texas, because Texas sucks. If they barely beat them, oh my God, you barely beat Texas. On the road, listen, Georgia hasn't been to Texas since the Civil War or the Alamo. I don't even know.
We're never going to go to Texas A&M.
No, you're not. You're not. You need to deal with the devil. He's like, they're not going to College Station. I don't trust Kirby around all those jars and boys doing all the finger guns and all whatever. I don't know. But like the whole thing is like, I just knew that was gonna be a tough game. And then you talk about like they got Arkansas on the road, who was ranked. You got Ole Miss, who was like 7-1, ranked 11th in the country at the time. You get LSU, which is Death Valley. You guys, as you know, like they played a bunch of road games against very good opponents. Tennessee was a top 10 team. They won 11 games. LSU went 10-4, and like they lost those 2 games by 4 total points. And I remember talking to my buddy about this, but like, again, the whole precious season, like if his name's escaping me right now, and I don't know why. If Malachi Starks tackle at the 1 yard line, I'm not saying you win the national championship, but you don't beat Missouri. You just don't.
I mean, you could argue that's the play of the season, and we said that, or we definitely said it was the play of the game that week. It was totally the play of the game,
without a doubt. And like all the stuff that had to happen for Ohio State, and like in games like that, it's tough to win a national championship. It's very tough, really tough to go 15-0. Makes it even more impressive that Kirby's able to do it. But if you think I'm going to sit here and like use that argument, and then look at Nick Saban, who hasn't gone 3 years without winning a national championship since he's been at Alabama. And you want to use the argument that, well, they lost 2 games last year, both on the road in 2 of the toughest environments in college football against top 15 teams by 4 points, both in the last play of the game. But they also almost lost a bunch of these games. Okay. So now, like, there's not another team in the country that argument is used more for than Alabama. And you can say, like, I'm being biased or a homer or a fan, whatever. But I get why everyone hates Bama, because they've skull dragged 94% of the country for the last decade and a half. And I would hate them too. Like you said, the Yankees earlier. I hate the Yankees. They're awful. They're awful people. Imagine rooting for a team where like the Braves now. Pride in the entire state is like space camp up in Huntsville, which is about as close to Tennessee and out of the state as you can get. Like the only other thing they're scoring off the charts in is like diabetes and poor education. That's it. And they got a really good football team. So I get why you hate Alabama.
Yeah.
But like Saban coming back with all that talent and like angry. And I like people want to hate on Tommy Reese and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Because I saw it yesterday. Tommy Reese only scored 21. They only scored 21 points against Marshall. Well, you know that like at the end of the year, and they won 6 of their last 7 games, and they put up like 38.9 points per game in those, and they beat three ranked opponents in those last 6 games. They beat like number 4 Clemson like a drum, like, and beat 2 of the ranked teams, beat South Carolina, like put up 40 points in half those games. Like, just something tells me that Saban knows what he's doing more than Bobby Wilson.
So what's your outlook on the season for Bama?
And they're going to lose to Texas.
You think they're going to lose to Texas?
I don't think they have the quarterback situation figured out before Texas. And it's going to be tough to go the rest of that game.
If Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt in the game, do you think that
you can't bring that up?
Well, you can't.
Crap me at this. Don't even start to do this with me. I am not the one.
That's off the table. So was Mechie and Williams. We can't talk about it today.
Listen. If Quinn Ewers had played Alabama with full health and beaten them by 17 points a month prior, I would definitely understand the argument, and that's all.
Okay, that's
no. I think that I'm a huge fan of Sark. I know Graham, one of my good buddies, and you guys referenced him earlier, how great he is and all that kind of stuff. Like, he's not, and he's like underperformed, I guess you want to say, like at USC or Washington or whatever. But when Sark has dudes on offense, like he will scheme up better than anyone else in the country. Him, Kiffin, Ryan Day, best 3 offensive play callers in the country, hands down. You guys saw it last year with Ryan Day, and he has dudes, right? He can develop the court position. Sark with Quinn Ewers in year 2 of that system, who's the highest ranked quarterback recruit ever from 247 Sports, with Xavier Worthy, with AD Mitchell, nobody knows this kid's name because of Brock Bowers, but like with Jatavian, I think it's Sanders, like the tight end who's the next one on the NFL draft board, like for tight end position. And then you have Whittingham in the slot, who's also a former 5-star. You're deeper on the offensive line. They've got dudes everywhere. They returned all 5 offensive linemen, and they've got dudes everywhere. I think Texas is going to be really good. I don't think they have the quarterback situation figured out by then, but I do think the rest of the season, you get Tennessee at home, you get LSU at home, and you get those in revenge games. I'm not going to try to talk sense into Tennessee fans because I'm not going to talk sense into a fucking brick wall. It's a waste of time. But like LSU fans, I get the excitement because you hate Saban just as much as, even more probably than Georgia fans do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Beating Bama twice in the last 11 years by a combined 6 points. And one of those games was with one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah.
So I'm not first. So I think they go 11-1. I think they get to Atlanta.
Get to Atlanta.
Okay.
Versus who?
Probably Kentucky or Florida. Yeah, you idiot. Like, who is coming? I said this before last season. I said Georgia was going to go undefeated, and there was no one that was going to be within 10 points of them. Who is it within 10 points of that team this year?
No. I think that you're preaching to the choir here, but I just wanted to confirm that you think that we're going to be there as well. Yeah. So I think I posed this question to you on your podcast the other day, but like just for the folks listening, Bama's got 3 losses or whatever. What happened?
What do you mean? Oh, if that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then what has to go wrong?
What has to go wrong for Bama to not make it is what I'm saying.
You lose it. Stop smiling when you ask it, kid.
I'm not smiling.
So you lose to Texas, right? And here's the scary part of losing to Texas. That is the earliest loss you will have had in the Nick Saban era. Even in 2007, they didn't lose that early, right? Okay. So then you got to, back against the wall for the rest of the season. And we haven't had to get to this point where you've had a 2-loss SEC champ, but I don't see them losing another game. If they get to Atlanta and they beat, if they get to Atlanta and then they beat an undefeated Georgia, I see that happening for one. And then two, like, I don't know if they get in the play, there's just so many other things that have to go right for that to happen. If they have 3 losses, here's the nightmare scenario. You get Ole Miss at home early. Like, Kiffin has put up a really good fight in 2 of those 3 games, including the 2020 game, which was the year he shouldn't have, right? Then you get like A&M on the road, which I think A&M is going to be really improved. And Petrino had gave Saban fits at times when he had some dudes there like with Wingo and Mallet and guys like that. You get to October, I don't see them losing to Tennessee. I just don't. But here's the nightmare scenario is if you get to November and you get to the last week of the year and Bama has 3 losses and you got to go to Jordan-Hare. There's a very real chance that Auburn team is coming off 5 straight wins with the way their schedule sets up. Okay. I'm not saying because it's Hugh and because he beat Bama twice, whatever. That's why. But like going to Jordan-Hare is a nightmare in general. Yeah. For most, especially Alabama. And if you get to a place where you have 3 losses and you're already out of contention, which you haven't had to deal with that, since 2007, what is the psyche of the team? Like, what are you playing for? To what? Right. To go to fucking Tampa? Like, no, I'm good. I think that is the scary thing. I think that if they get 3 losses, they're getting 4. I'll say that. Like
Okay.
I think if they get 3 losses, they're getting 4 because I don't they haven't had to have that mindset of like digging themselves out of it. But I will also say, if you're dancing on the grave, dance lightly, man, because they got some talent there, and I think they're going to be a lot better than people think.
Yeah, I gave up on dancing on the grave of Nick Saban many years ago, Chris. So
Thank you. It means a lot to me, to be honest.
You're gonna have to peel that program from his cold dead ends.
I mean, so what's crazy? No, he's got 3 years, I think. But like, I think there was somebody said it today that was like, "Oh, well, we're not scared of Saban." Like, first off, yeah, you are. Like, be honest. Like, yeah, like I saw an LSU fan say it. Like, yeah, you are, because he's owned you. He's owned everyone. Like, I mean, like besides Louisiana Monroe, he's owned everyone. Like, I think that if you get to a certain point, like you talk about, like Josh Heupel and Brian Kelly and Kirby Smart aren't scared of him. I don't think Kirby Smart is scared of him, and I don't think Brian Kelly would say that he's scared of him. And I know what happened with Josh Heupel last year.
Mm.
But those are 3 games. Those are 3 coaches that have a combined 3 wins in however many games against them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he is the GOAT. I mean, he's the best coach that we've seen in college football.
But do you think that it's like it's some of the luster is starting to fade kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like where it's like, oh, it's more recent. So is it going to grease the wheels to like maybe he bought the house in Florida, you know,
I don't
he's
think
talking about Italy. He's talking about Italy with Mr.
Okay, hold on. Here's another favorite thing about Georgia for me. I remember sitting there before I made the horrible joke to Kirby that got fucking. I know he heard me, but I know he heard me.
He totally heard you.
Unbelievable.
Who was sitting next to you that you were making
my buddy
about?
George Somerville from the College Chat podcast. And so that is the guy who's Scottish, and he's on a all England based college football show. They're fantastic. You should give it a listen. They're really great. Nice. I should have thrown him under the bus, but I told him I was throwing him under the bus too. I remember asking the question too, and I was so geared up. I had like been on like the worst travel experience ever to get there, but I was like, I'm asking this question. It's gonna be hilarious. I killed it the year before with my Brian Kelly accent joke and my Sam against the spread comment. And I was like, there's what could go wrong. And I remember I said it, and like the words were just like they just kept coming. It was the longest question ever. And then I asked it, and he was like, what? And I was like, no, maybe repeat it. It's so bad. It's awful. Anyway, like even Kirby said, he was like, we want to go to Italy, but we went to Mississippi for a baseball tournament.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I saw people saying this too, because this is like what Georgia does. Like your fans, you guys are the mountaintop. I don't think your entire fan base knows it yet, but you are the top. And like Saban goes to Italy. First off, Kristen Saban is one of my absolute best friends in the world. One of the reasons I get so defensive of her dad, because it's like there's nobody that understands what she has had to like I've watched that firsthand of like people saying just horrible stuff about her father because he is good at coaching football. Like, and it makes me upset. And it's probably a little bit irrational when it comes to the territory. And she knows that more than I feel like I even do sometimes. But they've been planning that trip to Italy for over a decade. Like flat out. He's 71. Let him go to Italy for a week.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm so glad that my coach he's busy recruiting. I'm like, it's June. Like signing days in December, bro. Like, calm down. You really think that Saban's not gonna throw a bag at somebody now that it's legal to do it? Like, what are we talking about?
We just didn't realize it was part of the process, Chris. Sorry, we're trying. We got to keep track. Exactly. We got to keep track.
So I think that like some of the luster, like the original question you asked is some of like the luster, like the shine starting to wear off. I don't think it is as much as people want it to be and are pretending that it is. I know they had close games. It's weird to me, the whole Bryce Young, like he had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. The Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks don't lose games now. I watched Georgia beat one in the Rose Bowl. I know that. Like I watched Bama beat the brakes off one in Miami the year after. Like not all Heisman quarterbacks go undefeated. Like that was a weird. I think that people want this thing to be over, and it's towards the end of it, right? I don't know if he was another one, but anybody, Mike Bratton, love to death, SEC Mike. He used to work at SES. He's been saying this for like 5 years. Like it's the same thing. Like, they're losing 3 games this year. Like, are they? Like, because you've been like I've heard it for 5 years. Like, are they really doing that?
Yeah. We saw a Heisman quarterback lose in Indianapolis too. Sorry, I couldn't.
You're such a
Anyways,
dick. Hold on. You also saw him one prior, and he set an SEC championship game record for yards against the greatest defense in the history of college football.
That was one of the most impressive quarterback performances I've ever seen. I'm not going to deny that. It was incredible. All right, I do have to circle back because I feel like Fletcher is listening and is like, why didn't he ask him my breakfast at Tiffany's part of the question? So
I love
why
Fletcher.
did Deep Blue Something never have a follow-up hit after breakfast at Tiffany's?
Because that song alone was like, first off, the 90s. I feel like the 90s had so many more
one-hit wonders. Yeah.
I don't know. And they were all kind of the same. It was just all like Gin Blossom's Light was coming out with a new song, and that was it. But it was in like this heyday of time where it's like, hey, we could sell a whole album of shit, but have one good song on Star 94 they'll play in Atlanta on repeat, and that's it. Like, exactly. So I don't know if People Something didn't have another one. I'll tell you the worst one is the Rembrandts. I bought that cassette. The Rembrandts,
the Friends theme song.
The Friends theme song.
Like, just to show you right off the bat, when I was 8 years old, that I was never going to make good financial decisions. Like, that song wasn't going to get stuck in my head like immediately and awful. Like that song would be played out. It was on Friends. Besides watching that show, that's probably the widest thing about is buying the Rembrandts tape.
Amazing. I like that you keep saying that because Josh and Graham used to say that we were the widest Georgia podcast. And we're like, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Jim and John is pretty good.
Probably accurate.
There's probably another.
Tough but fair.
Tough but fair. That's right.
So I'm gonna pivot at like 180 because I know Chris is running out of time. But tell us, you've had some interesting run-ins in Atlanta, and I have wanted to hear this story. I have wanted to hear this story since I found out that this happened to you.
Yeah,
you've been shot before.
Yeah.
What happened?
So we will close with this because it's like a 10-minute story. Okay, so I will preface this with a lot of things, but I'll say that like I always made a joke out of it because like the comedian in me, like I didn't want it to be serious when it happened. It was serious, and I'll explain that part at the end. But 2016, August 6th, 2016. Let me start by saying I was in phenomenal shape. Okay, phenomenal shape. I was 30 years old. I was in my prime. I was out running. I had a tank top on, and I remember I was in Virginia Highlands because I lived off of Drury Street on the same road. If anybody's familiar with Atlanta, like right next to Ponce, where Diesel Bar used to be. So I go out of my neighborhood, take a right, go up the hill, take a right in front of like all the Virginia Highland bars, whatever. And it's like 6:45 p.m. It's broad daylight. August 6th, 6:45 p.m. I take a right onto Ponce, and I'm running, and I'll never forget. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, it's kind of like a downhill at that point. So it's like, this is great. Like I'm hitting stride. I'm peaking right now. This is great. And I remember I was listening to this song from Machine Gun Kelly and Waka Flocka. And the exact moment, I'm not
appropriate.
The exact moment, the song, the lyrics where he goes, I'm so motherfucking violent. And I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, look at me go. And I hear pop, pop. And as soon as I hear it, I'm like, I look to my left and I feel something hit the back of my arm. And I remember the first thought in my head was that I get hit with like a slingshot. I don't know why that was my first thought, but I was like, did I get hit with like a slingshot? And then I was like, internal monologue going. I was like, no, idiot, you're 30 years old. Nobody's hitting you with a slingshot. And I was like, I look like, if you're familiar with where Ponce is, this is across from El Ponce. There's these apartments that have yellow brick, and I'm standing in front of the yellow brick under these trees. And I was like, oh, well, I wonder if like something fell and hit the back of my arm, and I feel the back of my arm, and there's a hole. And I like look down, and like there's like blood on my arm, and I remember saying out loud to nobody, I go, did I just get shot? And I see this car drive by, and they're like, and within seconds, my entire arm is just covered in blood. And you know when you like cut yourself deep, it's like a dark, some would say crimson blood. My entire arm is covered in blood, and I'm like, I just got shot, I think. And so like I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with the neighborhood. I'm just gonna tell you the full story. There's an urgent care at the bottom of the hill on the corner. I had been there one time. when I had stayed out too late and gone home to a place with a person I should not have been with. I convinced myself that I needed to go to the doctor to make sure I didn't catch anything, unlike those Bama receivers in the 2021 national championship. Turns out I actually had high my own stress. And that's all it was. But that was my only time I had ever been to that urgent care. Because nobody goes to urgent care if you get fucking shot. You go to urgent care if you have a cough and you want to miss work the next day. So I'm like, okay, going to urgent care. I know what my medical record is here, and it's not great. And so I'm like, I get down, and you're in this building. You have to walk up these stairs into the parking lot. And I'm like, okay, hopefully there's nobody in the parking lot, nobody in the lobby. And I go up the steps, and the parking lot is full. The lobby is fucking packed, and I'm like, so I'm just like bleeding profusely. We're in this tank top, and like I walk in, and it's like,
are you in pain? Like, is there?
So I'm so confused as to what's happening. Like, I just know there's a hole in my, and I'm like, what is going? Like, I'm in pain, but I'm like this, like all this, like adrenaline.
You've got adrenaline running through you from running,
and machine gun belly going through my veins right now. Like I'm good. And so I walk in, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe like I don't want to make it cause a scene. And I had like, okay, backstory real quick. My dad, who I'm still estranged from, but he was very dramatic. And I was like, I don't want to like make a big deal out of this. It's not a big deal. I'm sure it's nothing. So I'm going to just make as little as possible out of this whole situation. I walk in, and there's these two black ladies behind the front counter, and I go, hi, I'm so sorry. I think I got shot. And this one woman just goes, nope, and just spins the chair and like walks off. And I was like, and then like you look over to the left, and there's like everyone's like, is this? And I'm again tank top, pouring sweat, pouring blood, and I'm like, hey, like they rush me to the back. So I get back there. I'm sure I didn't get shot. Like, who would have shot me? And so then it becomes like this whole just streaming words vomit coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, I'm just running, and they're like, how did this happen? I was like, I was just running, and like, there's no way. And she's like, I think you got shot. I'm like, who would have shot me? Was it my dad? Was it my first stepdad? Like, what is happening right now? And so I'm like, I'm not really sure. Like, I was like, it probably isn't a bullet. And she's like, no, this has been going around. And I go, what? And like, I was like, she goes, yeah, there was 2 people jogging that got shot last week. And I was like, in Atlanta? And she was like, no, it was like Detroit and Washington State. And I was like, oh, okay. So like nothing can do with what we're talking about right now. She said, what's going around? Like, it's not the flu. It hasn't been going around. So they're trying to like bandage this thing up. They cannot get the bleeding to stop. And so I'm like, I see the nurse, and like, again, we're at urgent care. We're not at Grady. We're not at like a hospital. So she is just like, she's not trained for this. She's like, oh, stick your tongue out and put a thermometer in here. Like, this is like, what do I do? And so I see this like look in her eyes. I'm trying to calm her down. And I'm like, hey, it's fine. It's not a big deal. She's like, I can't get the bleeding to stop. I can't bleeding to stop. I was like, listen, if I pass, I pass. Like listen, I'm from Stone Mountain. I'm going to get so much fucking street cred out of this. Like, it's unbelievable. Worst comes to worst, I die. We get some airbrush like t-shirts printed, like RIP Chris, maybe a wristband or a bracelet or something, like a Live Strong thing. We're good. Like, we're good. And she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what, like, why would you be saying it? They go get another nurse to come back. They have to rebandage it with pink gauze, by the way. That was a fantastic addition to it.
Of course.
So they get it, like, finally get the bleeding to stop. And they're like, okay, like, there is a bullet in your arm. Like, you definitely have been shot. And I was like, okay. Like, we need to call an ambulance. And I was like, there's no way I'm paying for an ambulance. Like, cancel that Uber right now. I go, you need to call my girlfriend. And the person I was dating at the time, she's actually famous now. Her name's Ashley Hesseltine. She's got a podcast called Girls Gotta Eat. Don't listen to it. But she's like, it was not a good relationship. And I was like, no. You don't need to call an ambulance. You need to call my girlfriend, because we're just at dinner in like 20 minutes. And this is going to be a whole fucking thing. So like, you need to call her now. They're like, no, like it's fine. It's like, she comes in as the EMTs come in. And they were more concerned with my well-being than she was. I'll just say that. And so they come in, and they're like, you need to go to Grady, or you need to go to AMC. They have trauma units there, and blah, blah. Ashley walks in and just is like, what happened? I was like, I got shot. She's like, with what? And I was like, fucking gun. Like, what are we talking about? They're like, listen, he doesn't want to take the ambulance. You need to take him to AMC or Grady. They have trauma centers. What does Ashley do? Puts me in the car, drives me to Piedmont Hospital where I was born off of Peachtree.
Right.
We walk in. And
Distinctly not Grady.
Not Grady. Because so when they told her that, her exact response was, she goes, ew, that's gross. I was like, well, this isn't dinner on Saturday. It's like, Chili's or Applebee's. It's like, we got to
but fair.
We got to go. Like, what are we doing? And so she takes, we walk in, tell them what happened. The first thing the woman said, she goes, I don't know why they told you to come here. We don't have a trauma unit. And I was like, thank you. So
you're like, I know, right?
Right. So at this point, it's like 7:30, 7:45. They take me directly to the back. I don't have to be in the waiting room, whatever. Ashley leaves to go to Chick-fil-A across the street. Side note, doesn't bring me anything back, which was a nice touch. And I'm just sitting there, and there's like this, like, whoever the pre-doctor is, like, I don't know what the reference or what the title would be, but it's like a dental hygienist. And I'm not going to give her any more credit than that, because that's basically what she was. Because she was like, listen, it's not a bullet. I don't know who told you it was a bullet. Like, it's not a big deal. And in my head, like, I'm bartending at Houston's. I have great health insurance, but I also, like, am not getting paid on a salary. I'm getting paid when I show up to work. So, like, I can't be missing a bunch of work and then just like, things will be fine. So my main question was like, how much work am I going to miss? What is happening? Blah, blah, blah. She's telling me, she goes, it's not a bullet. Like, the bullet hole is not that deep. And I guarantee it was like a BB gun and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And in my head, like, that's all I want to believe. I don't want it to be like a serious thing. And then I was like, so she leaves. The doctor comes in with the x-rays. And she's like, did she just tell you it was a BB gun? And I was like, yeah, it's probably a BB gun. She goes, you think there's any kids playing with BB guns off of fucking Ponce in Atlanta? And I was like, no, Insight, that's a good point. My bad. And she was like, no, it's a bullet. You have a 22 bullet in your arm. It's this close to the bone. Here's the x-rays. And it's like a little ball. It's just sitting in there. And I go, okay, well, what do I do? And she goes, well, it's in there. Like, so when a bullet goes in, it goes in hot. And it, at the time I had muscle. So it goes into muscle and it cauterizes around it. Because it's like, it like immediately is like kind of like engulfed. She goes, so we can cut into the muscle and pull it out. But I was like, all right, well, how much work am I going to miss? She's like, probably 3 weeks minimum. We have to cut into, it's a surgery. And I was like, can I just leave it in there? And she's like, you can leave it in there. You know, I was like, I'm not going to have any issues. And she's like, no, you won't have any issues. Like, it's a bullet wound, but it did not hit your bone, blah, blah, blah. You will be fine. I was like, I'm not going to be setting off metal detectors. You are good. Like, okay. She goes, you can also meet with like a plastic surgeon or whatever it would be to have like a procedure later if you want. I was like, yeah, I'll just do that. I'll do that. Knowing full well I wasn't going to do it.
Right.
So then the best part of the whole thing, I had a comedy show that night at Limerick Junction in Virginia Highlands, right? So the show starts at like 9 or 9:30. It is like 8:45, whatever. You're supposed to be there early. And I'm like, I remember I'm late, obviously, because I have been shot. I've got this entire gauze like wrapped around my whole arm. So I show up to the show and I'm like, I go up to the host. I'm like, hey, and he goes, I don't even want to hear it. He's like, I told you to be here at this time, blah, blah, blah. You're always late. Like, just like ripping into me. I don't say a word. I'm like, okay. And he goes, you're going up last. I'm like, that's kind of where I'd want to be anyway. That's fine. And he's like, you're getting 5 minutes. That's it. I'm like, okay. So I just sit there with a back pocket. Don't say a word. Go up on stage. My entire set is telling the story of what happened. Right. And I'm doing it from a position of like, it ends up just being a BB gun, haha, whatever.
Right.
So I'm telling the story, and I swear to God, all this is true. Telling the story, and everyone in the audience is like kind of laughing because the way I'm delivering it and telling it, but also like, what? And it, like, I'm almost to the punchline, and this like very effeminate voice, this gay guy in the back, he goes, "Oh my fucking God!" And I was like, "What?" Dude rushes up to the stage, holds out his phone. He goes, "Is this you? Is this you?" He's like, multiple pictures in a Facebook status. He's like, I'm at urgent care, and some dude just came in and said he got shot in a tank top, and it's like just me, like, oh, I was like, yeah, that's me, and everyone's like, what the, like, probably the best that I ever did at Limerick, at least.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's what happened. I got shot. That's how the whole thing happened. I will say that as much of a joke as I made out of it, I went to work. I took a day off and I went back to work like Thursday and told the story, like trying to get some extra tips, like, oh yeah, Sean, like, and I'm telling it's like funny to everyone. We were finally saying it to this. We had cops that would walk us to our to our cars at the end of the night, and he was like, "Hey man, you like know this isn't funny." I was like, "Nah, it's kind of fun. Like it's like, it's whatever." And he's like, "No, it's not funny because whoever shot you wasn't aiming at your arm." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You're running like this, and you got shot like the bullet came in like this way." And he's like, "Whoever shot you wasn't aiming at the back of your right arm. It's like if it hit, like it was this close to the bone, which would have shattered the bone. He's like, if it was an inch lower, it would have like shattered your elbow. If it's over to the left a little bit, maybe it hit you like in the spine, here in the eye, like all this stuff." And I was like, "Oh, like this is not fun." And then I find out like from the cops, like of course they never found out who did it, and all they said was like it's like a random act of violence that it's like they have an uptick of in the beginning of the school year because of like gang initiation or whatever, and that was it.
So is the bullet still there? Still in the arm?
Still there, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So next time anybody's talking shit on Twitter, just know I've taken a bullet in my body, and that probably hurts less than some of the words you guys use towards me about my team.
I'm gonna say at some point, leave him alone. He got shot. I'm gonna use it
every time. Like just have to be like a leave Brittany alone situation. So
yes.
that was a long-winded story, but yeah, that was the whole thing, man.
Wow, hey, that's crazy. I feel like everybody will like respect you.
I doubt it.
A little, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Like 3 days, and then I'll say something like, "I don't think Carson Beck's going to complete 67% of his passes." And be like, "That guy, I'll shoot." I'll tell you what's funny. I did an Auburn show a while back, and somebody brought up. It was like Auburn After Dark or something, and this guy raised his hand to talk, and they go, his name was Zoo, and they go, "Zoo, you got something to say to Chris?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, I just want to let you know, I've seen the shit you said about Auburn. Like, that's sad that you got shot, but I would have shot you twice." And I was like, "Okay." So there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man. Chris, good stuff, man.
Well, yeah, man, I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
I know you got to get going. I know you're a busy man as the season rapidly approaches. John and I had talked about, wanting to have you on. I'm glad we finally reached out. Yeah. I know I had asked right after we didn't talk about this, but I had mentioned, I think on the podcast before, right after we had a walk in the rain in LA, I said, "Hey, you want to come on the podcast sometime?" And you said you would, and you followed through. So much appreciated.
That was such a fun. That was a fun trip.
It was a good time. So, it was a good time.
Anyway, yeah, man, anytime. I appreciate it, and I would love to do it again. This was great. We can talk about. I don't know. I mean, like maybe we'll set an over under for how many days that, as you said, I'm sure people will respect you now. We'll see how long that lasts.
Maybe we can get when Georgia and Alabama meet, SEC championship preview.
I just like
everyone will be really happy with Chris at that point.
Yeah, like even if I say that you guys beat us, like I don't. I mean. Anyway, that's I don't.
We haven't had a good know your enemy episode with an actual enemy.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's been a while since we've done
totally done. And also, let's not forget either. Like I kind of want to do this. And I know I don't want to be like overvaluing myself, but my favorite thing from the Georgia fan base was that Tennessee game a year ago, and the video that kind of went viral with like your fans and like on Twitter of like what I said was going to happen with the Georgia Tennessee game, because I've never been more accurate about anything in my life.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I got to go to it. I will say this, just the way Tennessee fans and how awful they were. I have never been that pumped for a win, including Bama, maybe in the last 5 years in the 2021 SEC championship. So I was thinking about this. I was talking to Dog Sides about this. Like, I kind of want to do that again and like pick a game where you guys want some motivation. It's not going to be against Alabama. And then we'll get like a GoFundMe to bring me on. We'll donate to charity or whatever. Or I'll just be angry and say a bunch of F words about Tennessee again. I don't know. But I do enjoy that part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that was Coach Trill wanted us to ask you about that. So apologies to Coach Trill and a few of those we didn't get to questions. But we'll have Chris back. And we can work the answers through back channels. So
love it.
All right, man. I know you got to run. Thanks for coming on the pod. Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored, Vern Funquist on Twitter. Chris, thanks again for coming on My God Podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great night.
All right. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.